today I'm talking about anxiety and stress in child custody. Let me ask you this question. Do you get a sick feeling in the pit of your stomach every single time you receive a communication from your co-parent? I know that used to happen for me a lot. Or maybe you've been lucky enough to have the experience of having a process server come to your home or find you at work and serve you with court papers for a motion on child custody. Also, very, very stressful. Also brings up that feeling in your gut, in the pit of your stomach, right? Where you just feel sick. This can make it really hard to function, right? This causes so much anxiety and stress that a lot of times it's hard to work. It's hard to parent. It's hard to even put one foot in front of the other. And so we don't have some magic wand to just drive away the anxiety, but how can we keep that from intruding on our daily life? Well, one of the things that helps a lot is if you can step back and really see this for what it is. Because so many times we catastrophize, right? We think, oh, we have this motion in front of the court. We're going to go in. What if this bad thing happens? What if that bad thing happens? We what if all over the place. And so really, can we reframe that and say, what if something good comes out of this? What if this ends up making things better? If you have a parent that is clueless to the system and clueless as to what the court wants, and then they go off half-cocked, filing motions and doing all these things and just trying to cause stress, a lot of times that will eventually backfire on them. And so we have to kind of trust the system a little bit and let it do its job. I do find that over time, the system will usually, the courts will figure out what's going on. A lot of times, they struggle in the beginning to really figure out the dynamic, and they'll kind of give both people the benefit of the doubt in the beginning when they're trying to figure out what's really going on. But if you have a parent that's continually filing, continually causing problems, and continually not cooperating with the other parent, eventually that is going to start to come through to the court. Now, in the meantime, is it causing you anxiety and stress? It is, but if we can reframe that to, look, if this person keeps doing this, the court's eventually going to figure out what's happening. If this person keeps behaving in all of these ways, the experts and the other people involved are going to see it. And so instead of saying, well, what if this bad thing happens? What if I lose my kids? What if I've only got every other weekend? What if you ended up with more time? What if the other parent loses and this causes them to stop being difficult and not to file anything for the next 7 years in your case? If you knew that was going to be the outcome, would it be worth it? And I think for a lot of people it would. But our brain automatically goes to that worst place of what the outcome is possibly going to be. The other thing that causes us a lot of anxiety and stress is just fear of the unknown. Right? A lot of times we don't know what to expect in these situations. We don't know what this is going to look like. We don't know how the court looks at these things. And that can be really scary. I know when I went through my own divorce about 17 years ago now, I had never been in court for even a traffic ticket. And so for me, I had no clue what to expect at that point. I didn't know what the process was. I didn't know how to write a declaration. I didn't know how to stand up in front of the court and talk. I didn't know any of those things. And I had a lot of fear. And like a lot of you, I had a very, charismatic ex who seemed to be able to just talk his way through life and through almost any given situation. And so I had a lot of fear around those types of things. But if you can start to get educated on the court system and how they come at child custody and what the possible outcomes are, you can start to alleviate a lot of that fear. And honestly, that fear, that stress, anxiety, a lot of times will drive people to behave in ways that actually hurt their case. And so it's real important that we recognize that we are having these feelings and that we do take steps to try to minimize those feelings as much as possible. Many times I have clients that have attorneys and they still don't really understand what's happening. So they're still having that level of anxiety and stress that's causing them to maybe not behave or handle situations as well as they could. And then that works against them in court and hurts their credibility. So you may say, well, Tammy, I have an attorney, so I don't need to get educated on the system. And I would tell you, not true. You still need to understand, because an attorney's agenda is to push your case through the system. The attorney's agenda is not really to look at what's the best outcome for your family. And I'm not saying they don't care about that. They do, but they don't know your family. They don't have your value system. And so the outcomes that you want may not be necessarily what they think is the best outcome for your case from a legal perspective. The legal aspect of your case is only one aspect. You've got your own emotional part of the case. You've got your kids. You've got the day-to-day interaction with your spouse. All of those things that really aren't so much part of the legal part, but are going to have impact on you and your family for years to come. And so you want to handle that as well as possible. And you can't do that if you don't understand what's happening. The other thing that happens, I find, especially if you're dealing with somebody who is high conflict, and we talked about I touched on this just a little bit in the last episode, but a lot of times the other person will say, oh, the judge is going to do this, or, well, the court is going to do that. And they start to do the same thing they've done their whole life. And that is use their charisma, use their smooth talking to try to make you believe that you're going to lose when you go into court, right? Or that you're doing all these wrong things and that you've made the judge angry and just wait until you're in front of the judge on this issue. This goes back to my previous point as well, which is get educated so that you understand what those things are, so that you're not operating out of a place of fear, but out of a place of confidence and knowing. So it's real important when you're going through this that you find support of other people. And when I say that, I don't mean your friends and family. So often I have people who come back who have listened to friends or family about their situation. And, every situation is so different. And also that person may not have handled it the way you would have handled that given situation. And so we tend to kind of let that feed our fear or feel like that might be our worst case scenario. And maybe that person's behaved in ways that you've never behaved. One example I remember is Thomas and I taught a workshop one time, and we had a lady in there who said, oh, yeah, I talked to my brother and, he said such and such thing. And I remember Thomas stopped her and said, oh, has your brother been through a divorce? And she said, oh, yeah, 3 times. And Thomas started laughing and said, I'm not sure that's the person that you want to take your advice from. I also have people that'll come back and say things like, well, I have 3 children and my neighbor has 3 children and she's getting $500 more a month in child support than I am. Why is that? Well, it can be a number of things. Maybe her husband makes more money. Maybe you earn more money than she does if you're the support receiver. And so you're not getting as much because you have more of your own income. Maybe her ex-husband has less parenting time with the kids than yours does. Maybe health insurance costs for the families are very different. Maybe somebody's paying into a mandatory retirement in one situation and not in another. And so there's all these different factors that come into play when we're talking about the various issues. And even on child custody, sometimes parents live closer, sometimes they live further. Sometimes the children are younger and need more frequent transitions. Sometimes they're teenagers and don't care about the parents at all. There's all these different things. And so almost always there are different things in your circumstance than there are in somebody else's. And this is why just talking to friends and family can be, very dangerous, because we're sort of comparing notes with them, but we're not usually comparing apples to apples. We're comparing apples to oranges and bananas and pineapples and everything else. And so this is why it's important to have people around you that are educated and knowledgeable about the system and about how certain things are handled, because this isn't as simple as getting advice from your 3 closest guy or girl friends who have been through this, because it's not going to look the same for everybody. And those people can be great emotional support and they can be present for you. I have a lot of people that have been present for me since Thomas passed away. People that have come and brought food and spent time. And my children have come from out of state to stay with me for extended periods and support me. And all these people around me that I'm so grateful to have and to have their love and support. But at the end of the day, those people have not had the experience of dealing with the loss of a spouse. Most of them, some of them have, but most of them have not. They also don't have practical experience, a lot of them, on how to deal with grief, how to deal with trauma, how to process these types of emotions, and what are good things to do and what are bad things to do. And so I personally have gotten in a grief group to help me with that. I'm seeing a therapist and I have my friends and all those things. So I'm not saying your friends and family can't be valuable, but I'm saying they're one component of it, and you can't rely on them for the nuts and bolts aspect of your case and how to handle things in front of the judge, because how your friends or family would go about handling something isn't necessarily what a family law judge is going to want to see from you. And so it's real important that you make that distinction and you make sure that you're surrounding yourself with all those different components that you need to be successful in this situation. Child custody issues are tough. They're tough at the very best. And so make sure that you're surrounding yourself with good support that's going to help you do this well and the best you can for you and your kids. Thanks for joining me this week. If you are listening to me on YouTube, watching me on YouTube, I should say, you can see me, right? If you're watching me on YouTube, please click like on this video and also subscribe so that you get notified as new videos are released each week. If you're listening to the podcast, also subscribe so you get notified as new episodes are released. And please don't forget to rate and review me. I really appreciate that. Helps other people find me, helps improve my rankings, and I really appreciate your guys' support. I'll see you next week.